Good morning, Union Chapel. The faithful are here. The rest are traveling. They will be back among us, I am sure. I do want to clarify one thing that Chris said earlier. He said that, he had this experience where someone whacked him upside the head and he started walking right again. And if you need to get walking right again, come see him or me. We're not going to whack you upside the head. Just want to be clear. That might cut down on the numbers. On that note, happy 5th of July. It's never too late for freedom, in my mind. So what we're going to talk about today is free to serve. Now, I just gave away the punchline with the whole thing right there, because we're going to talk about what freedom is actually for. But if we're followers of Christ, we are free to serve. Now, what does that mean? It's interesting on this 250th anniversary of our country where we espouse freedom and being that that's the ultimate virtue that we get to enjoy every time. It strikes me that we don't really know what to do with freedom. Have you ever wondered what's freedom for? Okay, so I'm free. So now what? What do I do with that? Pray. That's a great one. Pray right out that door. Yeah. This is it. Did he hear me? Good. Hey, I've had more dramatic departures. No worries, right? So what is freedom for is a common thing. We often associate it with the ability to do whatever we want. We gather, we have parties, we have festivities. There is nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm saying. But underlying all of that, there's this realization that if you have not experienced the price of freedom, you know the freedom, the saying, freedom isn't free. If you haven't experienced the price of freedom, we're more likely to take that for granted. And my concern with America coming into this 250th year, that's 250 opportunities to forget what freedom costs and just to kind of let that slide or let that go. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's not the whole story. Right? Because there's a greater freedom that is even more eternal that I'm also worried that we might forget. And that is the freedom that Christ gives us. You knew I was going to say that. I'm a preacher. I'm supposed to say that, right? So here's what we think, and sometimes what we think freedom is for is so that we can do whatever we want. We can pursue the American dream. We can go for the gusto. You only live once. Carpe diem. How many other sayings can I come up with? Bumper stickers, right? But here's the problem. Sometimes we chase freedom and we just end up living in a nicer looking cage, right? Because if we're looking around, we're free to do anything that we want. We can do literally whatever we want. And we start to look around and we go, hey, that looks pretty nice. I want that too. Or we think that in order to provide, we have to have a minimum standard. By the way, the American minimum standard compared to the rest of the world, right? You come to somebody who we would consider poor here, and they're like a millionaire in many other parts of this world. And this is not me meddling in your lives about how much we spend or anything. It's just me observing that what we tend to chase after, the bigger is better idea, sometimes the bigger is better becomes the bigger is deader, not dead or debt or, right? So here's an interesting statistic, easy for me to say, that I looked up when I was struggling to find out, okay, so how do our freedoms and the things we pursue actually lead to more stress and less freedom? And I ran across this interesting statistic. Did you know, and you may be among them, odds are about half of you are, 45% of Americans lay awake at night stressing about their finances. Did I just name you or me? Nope, no stress. I have no finances to stress over, so yeah. Join the military, be rich, they said. Become a pastor, be rich, they said. Yeah, no. 45% of Americans are awake at 2 a.m. wondering about finances. How are we going to get by? How are we going to have enough? That statistic ought to stick in our heads, because what we ought to be doing at 2 a.m. is sleeping, resting, restoring, getting ready for the new day and what God has for us. But instead, we're awake thinking of this. This is just one study. By the way, other people are awake worried about other things. The point is, we don't sleep well. And that's partly a result, I think, of how we look at freedom. Now, this is the quote from Joshua. You might recognize it. Choose this day whom you will serve. And I'm using that because on this 5th of July, it seems appropriate that a grizzled old veteran would stand before you and say, choose this day whom you shall serve. Will it be the gods of the people or the God of Israel? Choose. I'm going to say the same thing to us today because we have a choice today. We have a choice to choose what culture tells us to do, to choose what self tells us to do, or to choose what God tells us to do. Only one of those is going to work out well. I'll let you guess which one. you got a 33% chance, all right? So it's not if we will serve, it's whom we will serve. And this might be the hardest part to grasp onto because we are wired to serve. That's the way God built us. It all started with a garden. And what was Adam's first job? To tend the garden. He was to serve God, to tend the garden. We are created to serve. We are created to worship. Worship simply means what is it that occupies your mind almost 24/7? Like what is it you keep coming back to like a moth to the light? You can't stay away from, you can't stop thinking about. You know, if you've ever been infatuated with your better half or your soon-to-be better half or whatever, you know what that's like. You can't stop thinking about him. You want to know everything about him. That's what I'm talking about. We're wired. Something is going to capture our attention to that degree. And we have to be careful what it is that captures our attention to that degree. Because we have a choice. We have what culture says, we have what self says, and we have what God says. Which one are we going to choose? Well, that depends. We're going to go into Galatians today, and we're going to look at chapter 5, if you want to follow along, verses 13 and 14. Let me set the stage for this. Paul is writing to the church in Galatia because they're having some serious issues. Now, they had a good start. They started really strong. They were going great. And then Paul went to do whatever Paul does, and somebody else came through, some other teachers, and began to convince them that, hey, this stuff doesn't count. This Jesus stuff doesn't count unless you go back to the old ways in the law. And specifically, he's talking about some very specific Jewish customs that they're being encouraged to pick back up. And Paul's saying, wait a minute, that was the old covenant. This is the new covenant. You don't need to worry so much about the letter of the law. You need to worry about the spirit of the law. So let's see what Paul has to say here in Galatians 5, verses 13 and 14. He says this, you, my brothers and sisters, you are called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. These are the words of God for the people of God, and for these words we are grateful. I want to pick apart a couple of things here. The main question of the day is, what is freedom for? Because if we don't know what it's for, we won't know how to use it. We won't benefit from it as much as we could. But here's the three things that I want to pick apart. I've become more and more fascinated by trying to decipher Greek here. I always say I try not to Greek out on you, but it's just so rich. It changes the nuance of the English language. So we're going to look at three Greek words. The one that means freedom, the one that means flesh, and the one that means servant. I'm going to put freedom aside for just a second. I'm simply going to say that this doesn't mean absolute, not anchored to anything. It means you are freed from whatever is holding you back from the right relationship with God. We'll talk more about that in a second. But this flesh, this is an interesting thing because it talks about, not to indulge in the flesh, right? So a lot of times we think that means, oh, there's certain things that I do, certain deeds that I do that are wrong, that are sinful, and that's the flesh. You're not wrong. But this is a little bit bigger than that. This is more insidious than that. This is the desire for self to rule. This is the one that puts me on the throne and takes God off the throne. This is the one that pursues my will, not his will. This is what we're talking about when we talk about flesh, and it will lead us pretty much astray because self can be a rough boss. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then this last one, this douleuo, servant, use your freedom to indulge, not to indulge, but to serve one another. So let me get this straight, Paul. You're calling me to be free, and then you're calling me to use that freedom to be a slave again. Did I get that right? Is that what you're thinking too? Me too, right? So this interesting word. And now slavery, you're going to be a slave to something too, if you think about it. If you go with purely what you want, and you're just pursuing that all the time, if you go to the extremes, they call that addiction. And you're a slave to your addiction, or you're a slave to your finances, or you're a slave to your image. I could go on all day. We're going to be a slave to something. We might as well make it good. Be a slave or a servant. Notice the word servant to God. Interesting fact, time for trivia question of the day. What do they call freshmen at the U.S. Air Force Academy? That you can say in public. What is it? Nope, probie is a Navy thing. Plebes, Navy, and Army. What's that? They did. That was good. I'm impressed that you know that. They call them douleuos. Douleuos. Now, see, now if you want to be in the know, Air Force Academy freshmen are called douleuos. Do you know why? Because of douleuo. They are servants. They are in service to their country. Now, when you put it that way, all of a sudden service has an honorable connotation. Well, what do? I'm in the military. I'm in the service. Service of what? Service of my nation. That's honorable. That's noble. By the way, that's what we're built for. We're all douleuos if we're children of God. So, interesting trivia fact, also preaches well. This is a difference between being enslaved to something and be a servant to a noble cause, which, by the way, you were built and created to do. So let's talk a little bit more about this freedom, because one of the choices we have when we choose who we're going to serve is ourself. Self is an interesting master. It can be very unforgiving, because there are two nevers that self will do. You'll never have enough, and it never forgets. Two things. You'll never have enough. Whatever that finish line, whatever that goal is that you said you wanted, when you get there, guess what? Self is going to go, okay, now what? Next, more. And again, when we go back to the debt. And I'm not just talking about money debt. I'm talking about time debt. I'm talking about health debt. I'm talking about spiritual debt. I wish I were talking about spiritual depth. This is really tough. I hope this microphone's picking all this up. Maybe I should go back to speaking Hebrew and on you all then. Self can be really rough here. This is the perfect picture for this idea, because if I focus only on me, maybe it's on me and my family. Just let's make it a little more noble, right? I'm focusing on my family. I want my kids to have the very best, the things that I didn't have when I was growing up. So they've got to have the latest and the greatest and the biggest and the poshest and the nicest and the fastest and you get the wheel idea? We're just on this endless wheel. And so we focus all our efforts inward, to the home, to the family. Again, not a bad thing. But if that's all that we're doing, we've missed the bigger picture. And I love this picture, because look at wouldn't you love to live in that cage if you're a bird? It's posh, it's soft, it's golden, it's gilded, it's nice, it's got a great view. You know what the problem is with the cage if you're a bird? You were meant to fly. You're not meant to live in this cage. And I love that the door is open and it's right by the open window. If you're a bird, you're meant to fly. You're meant to soar in these skies that are out here, not live in this gilded cage, not do something that you weren't built to do. And so often we put ourselves in these prisons, and we don't realize that it's not really prison, because the door is locked from the inside, not the outside. We could open that door anytime we want and walk out, but we don't. And there's a million reasons why we don't. But I hope that we don't just try to avoid certain things. Like I want to avoid being a slave to my finances. I want to avoid anxiety and worry, because eventually there's going to be something that catches you from behind. What I would rather have us do is look forward to what we can be. To put it in bird terms, I want you to look forward to soaring, because that's what you're built for. I don't want us to be caged. I want us to be truly free. Self is a horrible master. I hope we can eliminate that one right now. Anybody want to pick self as your master? Great, awesome. We had, by the way, another aside trivia note, core values for the Air Force. One of them is called service before self. And of course, Air Force guys, being what they were, altered all the signs to say self-service. So yeah, your tax dollars at work, right? So then we have to go back to this idea that Paul was also struggling with, because we tend to go on one end of the spectrum. There's either no law at all, I can do whatever I want, or there's, no, we've got to have rules and we've got to follow every single one of them down to the very jot and tittle of the law. So which one is it? And this is exactly what Paul is talking about, because he's come in and he's talked about Jesus and freedom and belief and faith and saved by grace. And now these other guys are coming back going, nope, you got to follow these rules. And if you don't follow these rules, you're not right. The problem with the rules is that they sometimes overextend their welcome. So I thought I would give you an analogy because how do I deal with this law versus grace? Can I do whatever I want? Do I have to follow the letter of the law? How do I balance all of that? And the answer is a broken arm. Stick with me for a second. There once upon a time was an arm. That arm was strong. That arm was capable. It was created to serve, and it served well. It could do amazing things. But one day that arm got broken, as you can see by the x-ray. How do we fix that? Can the arm serve the same way it used to? No, it's hurting, it's suffering. It, in some cases, might be considered disabled in the use of that arm. How do we fix that? How would you fix a broken arm? There's a picture. You put a cast on it, right? So is the cast part of the arm? It kind of is, but it's on the outside of the arm. What's the purpose of the cast? To stabilize, to make sure that that thing doesn't wiggle around so that the bone can heal. That's what the law does. The law is external to us. It provides a framework and a structure that holds everything together until the inside is right and the inside can be let go to live in freedom. So how does this work? Well, when you're young, parents, you know this, when your kids are just learning to drive and they say, hey, can I stay out till 3 a.m.? What do you say? No, because stupid people do stupid things at stupid times, and I don't want you to be a part of that. You put down a rule, external, you may not, because we're not sure that they have the driving skills, or maybe they've got an influence from friends or whatever. The inside is not quite mature yet to make those decisions, and so we protect them from the outside. But guess what? If we never encourage and grow that inside, that moral compass, then we're going to live life all in a cast. And at some point, parents, your kids are going to leave the house. Don't send them out in a cast, because you know what the world's going to do? It's going to break that cast. And when that cast is gone, what do they have? A broken arm, right? They're not going to be able to do anything. They're going to list about in this sea of society that tells them what's right and what's wrong, and they're not going to be able to stand on their own because it's not from the inside. The moral compass hasn't formed yet. So that's one example. Now, in some cases where, like if you look at situations around the world where they have disasters, Venezuela is going through some terrible times right now. And you know what never ceases to amaze me is that in great times of great tragedy, people will actually like, hey, this would be a great time to loot. Yeah. Do you not have enough bad in your life? Why do you do these things? It's because they don't have the inner compass. And so what happens? You send in the troops or the police, and what do? They martial law, right? Because society is broken. The bone is broken of society. And for a time, we need to come around that with that cast of martial law or imposed law until the inside can heal. But what if the inside never heals? That's where you open yourselves up to dictatorships and other things. Again, they're going to serve someone. But the internal compass needs room to grow. That internal compass for a Christian is called love. And it shows right here in the text, it says, entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command, love your neighbor as yourself. Why did he say love God? Isn't that the greatest commandment? Because he's writing to a church that already knows that part. See, the part that they've forgotten is it's not just about you and God. It's not, that can become self. Like, hey, God, I'm all about me and you now serve me. You hear this in prayer requests sometimes, right? God, please give me, fill in your blank. And then you don't get what you asked for, and you're mad at God because God did not serve you. Have we got that backwards? You know, my prayers have changed over the years. Like, God, put me where you need me. Give me what I need to be about your mission. And by the way, if I had a really cool car, that'd be great. I drive a Ford F-150. God made me very practical, right? So this idea of law or no law is kind of a timing thing. It comes and it goes with various stages of life, with various stages of civilization. Sometimes when we start to stray, we need that temporary cast, that external structure. If we take it off too soon, the thing that's inside crumbles. If we don't take it off soon enough, it never develops, and it's always dependent on the law. And what happens when the law goes away? chaos, anarchy. And maybe some of you have seen that in places throughout the world. It's not a pretty sight and not something I would want to hand off to my kids or their kids. So do we do this thing alone or not? The other great example, I just heard this last week. I was talking to somebody that was kind of struggling with the actions of a grown man. And the statement literally was, he's a grown man, he should know better. You know what that means? He's either relied on that caste so long that he never developed, or he has sprung free from that and declared self as master. But what he's not doing is living in the Spirit. Anytime you have to say he's a grown man or she's a grown woman, we've missed the mark, right? It's just as an aside. So why would we bother trying to align ourselves with God? Why would we bother to try to put ourselves in servitude to God when we just got freedom? Well, one is what we were built for. But think about this. If you're wondering, if you're straying, if you're like Chris and you've had this experience where you kind of strayed a little bit and God brought you back, think about this analogy. This is a vine being grafted back into the branch. And when that happens, first of all, think about the separation from God, what that leaves you with. It leaves you with you. And you can only handle so much. I don't care how good you are, how smart you are, or how rich you are. You can only handle so much. When you're apart from God, he says you can do nothing, nothing of consequence. But when you're grafted back into the vine, think about what that means for you. That means you're grafted back into the flow of the Spirit. That means you're grafted back into the power of Christ. That means that you're grafted back into the love of God that will then allow you to love neighbor. And that's something that you don't have to earn. That's something that you don't have to strive after. That's something that flows through you. Who would like to live in a state of flow? I am chief among you. Do I do it all the time? No, I'm often my worst enemy and I get in my own way, but my desire is to live in that flow because I have a love that never runs out. I have a vision that can't be cast away. I have light that is never overcome by darkness. And it doesn't mean my life is easy or cheery. It means that my internal compass is different. That's what I want for you, Union Chapel. I want your internal compasses to be different, to be aligned to true north, so that whatever the world is doing or saying or whatever is happening around us doesn't shake us off our feet. We're solid. We're good because Christ is good. That's what I want for all of us. That's the kind of freedom that I'm talking about. The reason we bother is that when we abide in him and he abides in us, we're going to produce some amazing fruit. Let me rephrase that. He's going to produce some amazing fruit through us. And all we got to do is hang in there. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do, Union Chapel, for this week. Last week, I asked you to pick one person and to start praying for them. This week, it's almost like it builds on itself. This week, I'm going to ask you to take that person that you've been praying for and think of one act of service that you could do for them. Be a servant to them. Be a servant to God for them. Love your neighbor as yourself. Whoever that is that you've been praying for, do one act of service with one person. That's all I'm asking. And see if God doesn't work at that in some amazing way. Now, it's even cooler is that sometimes you have a gift and they have a need and those two things intersect. That's amazing if you can make that happen. But you know, sometimes people might just need a listening ear, might need an encouraging word, might need a text going, hey man, how you doing? No, really. Maybe that's you right now. Maybe you have someone that you want to look out or reach out to. Whatever that is, take one person that you've been praying for, one act of service. And when we come back next week, I would love to hear your stories. Love to see how God worked in and through you and how he changed your heart by your service. When I think about freedom, I can't help but think about the cost of freedom. So there are two levels of cost to freedom. One might be personal, and some of you may have experienced this. You have someone that has actually given their lives so that we might enjoy the freedom that we have today. Our history is replete with these people. Look at any war. Look at any conflict. Look at any civil strife, and you will find people that literally gave their lives so that we could be here today in freedom. So some of you may know these people. Maybe they are folded flags on a mantle of yours. Maybe they're a face that you can't forget. They'll be forever young in your memory because they never had a chance to get old. There are a lot of them. You can see there. That's just one. These cemeteries are all over, more than I can count. But there's then one who looks over this and says, I get sacrifice. I see what you did there. I appreciate that. But you know what this one says that the others can't say? I died so that you might live again in eternity. See, that's the thing that makes Jesus different. He died also for an even greater freedom. The white tombs represent the freedom of our nation. The individual clothed in white represents the freedom from sin, the freedom even from the power of death. Death doesn't have the final word anymore. And we live into eternity. So as you're looking to answer the question, what's freedom for? It's to serve one another in love. If you're asking to answer the question, whom shall I serve? Only one of the people has died so that you can live in eternity. I might pick that one. He seems like a good bet. So as we approach the communion table today, it's ironic that we're doing communion, almost like somebody planned all that up there. Think about the way that you would approach this table, the way that you might approach this cemetery to honor a fallen hero. Think about the reverence, the awe, the gratitude that you would have that the individual gave his life. Think about that as you come forward. And then as you go away, think about this one thing that makes it all difference, makes all the difference. Joy. Because this individual died so that you could have freedom and rose again so that you could have it forever. If the Son sets you free, you are free. Indeed. The Son set you free from the power of sin and death so that you could have that right alignment again, and that right alignment will allow that flow to come through you and serve, because that's what you are wired for. That's what you are created for. You are free indeed. So choose, Union Chapel, this day, whom you shall serve. Will it be culture's rules, society's rules? Will it be what you desire above all else? Or will it be the one who died so that you can live forever? My advice, live like someone paid dearly for your freedom. Let's pray. God, thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who gave his life that we might not just live, be forgiven, but we might live forever. White as snow, sins cast as far as the east is from the west. God, help us to live into that freedom today. Help us to honor that. Help us to reconnect. If we have strayed, help us to graft them back into the vine so we might experience your love and your grace. If we've been there all along, help us to have that season where we dig in even deeper in this summer so that we can produce the fruit when you need us to. In this rapidly growing community, God, let this be an oasis where people come and see the fruit that's about to happen, the fruit that is happening, all because of our connection to you. God, help us to cherish that connection above anything else. Help our devotion to be solely to you. Help us to worship only you, because you are the only one that has words of life. You're the only one who died and rose again and invites us to follow. That's a love that I can't imagine, but that I'm grateful for. Thank you, God, for everything that you do. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen.